Can you hear me? Is that okay? No? Okay. I'll hold this too. So, hi. Um, I'm really excited to be here tonight. My partner, Eric Howler, is here as well. Um, I wanted to share kind of our side practice to our architectural practice. So we're architects, but we have had a passion for public space for most of our career. And in fact, we started our practice through public space and public art interventions initially. So while we do building projects, we always maintain maybe an over-healthy amount of public art projects in the studio as well. And one of the things we're most interested in is really creating these spaces that become social condensers, that become a mix of program types and a mix of different populations that would share a public space. So this is the new Boston Society of Architects we did a few years ago, where we really turned a office space program into a public gallery program for a more general audience than a society of architects. And you can see it really tried to, through one element, which is the stair, create one wayfinding system to bring people up to the second floor and into the gallery spaces. So I mentioned we actually started our practice through public art. This was one of the first competitions we won for the Athens 2004 Olympics. The project was called White Noise, White Light, and it was only going to be up for about a month. And the Olympic Committee was eager to activate the center of the city since most of the Olympic events were happening actually on the, let's say, non-historic center. And they wanted to mix old and new, so we have this gorgeous backdrop of the Acropolis, but our piece was actually an interactive field of fiber optics. So as you move through the field, the light got brighter and created a wake behind you as you moved of light. And it also had a sound quality, which was white noise. And that led to actually a series of more permanent public art projects. And over time, what has become interesting to observe is how interim programming or kind of temporal pieces in public space are hinge pieces that help transform an area. So this is on Vermont Avenue in Washington, D.C., which was considered at the time like not an ideal stretch of sidewalk, but the developer had an idea of creating an art piece, but also some interactive lighting and signage that went from inside to outside of the building. And we've been using this medium of light to activate, to create, spaces that are maybe more residual, to transform them into something special. This is an infamous building at MIT, known for being super uncomfortable because it's very windy. It's an IMP building, and the wind just hits it, and it's, you can't even open the doors because it's so windy. And we decided to use that as an opportunity. So this is called Windscreen, and it's a series of a few hundred custom wind turbines which light up just simply through mechanical energy. So the windier it is, the brighter it gets, et cetera. So it's a fully renewable energy piece, and it was up for MIT's 150th birthday. We do pieces that are 30 days. This was one of our shortest projects, which was 3 days. In Philadelphia, we were asked to find a way to activate the riverfront. In Philadelphia, by the train station, there's a big section change between the level of the water, the river, and the level of the road. So we created this public art piece, which was essentially a game, where by sitting on these different seats on the land, you could change the colors of the orbs in the water. And so kids and families would come down and they would kind of play, and as they were in and out of public space, it was the public that choreographed the piece as opposed to having a kind of pre-programmed choreography of light. So it used a passive sensor and RFIDs in order to kind of calibrate the relationship of one of the land orbs to 4 of the water orbs. And we, not only in lighting, but we're always interested in creating some kind of public space. So we were contacted by the city of New Bedford, and I actually did this through MIT. And they really wanted to build a boathouse. They had just undergone huge renewal of their waterfront. This was one of the major Superfund sites because of the pollutants in the water. And the mayor was interested in sending the message that this polluted waterfront is now clean and can be used for recreational use. So they planned a big boathouse project, but that was going to cost millions and millions of dollars. And so we proposed, why don't we create a temporary boat launch for crew boats, and we will just configure them out of these 3 pontoons. They could line up, create a landscape to launch the crew boats, and they could be reconfigured into a kind of floating picnic landscape. I think what's interesting about the Union Square project is its relationship to infrastructure. This is a project we're doing in the city of Phoenix where basically federal money is being spent to shrink the road, basically give the road a diet, to narrow the lanes, to increase bike lanes, and in doing them, improve the kind of pedestrian space of the roadway as opposed to the vehicular space. So we're creating a series of solar-powered shade canopies along the sidewalk and plazas. And I was just out there, and this is the first mock-up of one of the shade canopies. And I think what's really important is partnering with other interests for the program aspect that sometimes public art cannot give in and of itself. This is a project we partnered with Uni, which is a nonprofit. It came out of Boston Street Lab, but they decided one summer when the public libraries were closing on weekends because of cost cutting to actually create pop-up libraries that would go out to neighborhoods instead. And so it asked us to essentially create a bookshelf, but the criteria was that it had to be a little bit unusual. And so these plugs, basically each cube is a bookshelf, but you can plug it and unplug it and turn it into street furniture. And similar to the previous project, we decided to take this idea with this not-for-profit and enter it into the mayor's initiative this year. And we created a really small portable library, this time in the form of a wooden cart, a plywood cart. But what's nice about this cart is it seems pretty boring and banal as it goes down the street, but it turns inside out and then forms into this kind of little reading cart for the public. And the last 2 things I wanted to share is maybe more about the planning process in terms of public art. I was involved a few years ago with the 150th anniversary at MIT as more a curator than an artist. And what we decided to do was take the opportunity of the 150th and turn it really into a festival of art, science, and technology. And so I don't know if those familiar with MIT, we have this thing called the Infinite Corridor, which extends beyond the corridor. And the Institute is really life in a double-loaded corridor, but it has this amazing waterfront, riverfront, that we tend to ignore at MIT. So I thought it's really an opportunity to actually connect MIT back to the riverfront and really draw the community in, both from the Boston side and the Cambridge side, and so to connect both these kind of two parallel lines. And so we went through a process where we invited students and faculty to collaborate and propose projects that then got filled in a variety of interstitial spaces, some in the water, and they all grappled with some thematic about art, science, and technology coming together. And then lastly, I was asked to speak a little bit about my relationship with the Greenway. And I think one of the things that has always been interesting to us about the Greenway is the conflation of, again, infrastructure, private infrastructure, public infrastructure coming together, and how that can make a public space. And we did this project, we won this competition for Audi, really thinking about the future of mobility in the city, and that's why it's so exciting to think about Somerville and its future. And we imagined, so we were supposed to design for the year 2030, but we imagined a future where, you know, the road would anticipate what you needed, whether it was grass or energy, so PV panels, et cetera. And how those things could come together into a truly shared public space that didn't necessarily privilege just vehicular transportation. So this is, of course, the Greenway, and I wrote a critique of the Greenway several years ago, and I don't know why, but they were very kind enough to ask me to participate. So you should never critique something, because then you'll be asked to help be part of the solution as opposed to simply voicing the problems. But the Greenway, I think, there was so much energy spent on the underground infrastructural planning and the vehicular planning that only when the project was complete could they really start thinking about the public spaces, the green spaces above, beyond the landscape that was designed for it. So I was part of a working group for public art, which looked at the Greenway and conceptualized a kind of 5-year plan. And our proposal was really to think about the Greenway as a laboratory for public art, that we would encourage actually temporary works, experimental works, and not necessarily permanent works for the Greenway. And the first kind of series of that were these collaborations with institutions, so the Osemios piece that was on Dewey Square, and then the Matthew Ritchie piece that followed, and the one that I'm sure you guys have heard of that we're very excited about that's coming in the future, which is a Janet Eckelman piece. Again, all temporary to really use the Greenway as that kind of testing ground. And lastly, a project we're currently doing for the convention center, which they're calling the D Street Lab, is very much in this spirit. And our plan is to create a kind of public swing set that is a little bit unusual, building off of the tire swings. And the idea is that they change color in the wind and when you sit on them. And we've been kind of prototyping these in our office. And this is my daughter testing the very first one. Thank you.
Sure.
At the beginning of your presentation, I thought you used the term social condensers. Could you explain what a social condenser is?
It's a term which was popularized by Rem Koolhaas, but essentially the idea is you bring a mix of programs together. So instead of separating uses like housing is over here, commercial is over here, you intentionally bring different program elements, loud, quiet, busy, still, together to create kind of new public spaces or social spaces for engagement and opportunity. So you mix. It's a mixer in a way.